we want to talk about some of the cutting edge business models that have come out over the last 10 years, just in keeping with the theme of the rest of this episode. However, we don't really, we could just go on about each one indefinitely. So I think what I'm going to do, there's 7 or 8 of them that I have identified here, crowd economy, data economy, smartness economy, closed loop, decentralized, autonomous organizations, multiple world models, transformation economy. Let's take one of them at a time each week for the next 7 weeks, including this week. So let's start off with crowd economy in the first. It's the most common to understand. Most of the public is familiar with what crowd economy is at this point. And you would say Uber is the obvious poster child of a crowd economy type of application. Professional service providers use a platform to independently provide that service to individuals. So you don't think about who that taxi driver is when you call for a taxi. You just call for a taxi using the centralized application. And then somebody comes. You didn't pick who that somebody will be. They were queued up, they accepted it, and therefore you have been put into contact with an independent taxi driving business owner, I guess in a sense, and they are going to take you where you're going to go because all of that information comes to them from the platform. That is what crowd economy is. One of the biggest cliches in Silicon Valley is to call your business idea the Uber of this or the Uber of that. I suppose Airbnb is also the Airbnb of this or the Airbnb of that. But Uber, it's a great idea, and they're doing it with other things too. They're doing it with private planes now and this sort of thing. From what I understand, they've maybe not exactly the same as Uber works, but there's other business models that people are trying that kind of conform to crowd economy. I had a friend once, I was in the gym about 6 months ago, and I met a guy from Australia, and he said to me he was in Ukraine, here in Ukraine right now, and he was here because there's IT workers here who are helping him with a project. I said, okay, that's great. What's the type of project is it? He said it's like a babysitting app. It's like the Uber of babysitting apps. Immediately I thought to myself, wow, this must be $1 billion idea because Uber of anything says $1 billion. But then I thought about it for a second. I said, well, Uber of babysitters, is that something I would want to use? Would I want to use a babysitter app like Uber for my children? And this is when I sort of changed the subject because I realized that the answer was no. I'm not going to have somebody I don't know come and watch my children because an application told me to. That's an unacceptable risk. Somebody could sign up on the application, manipulate their feedback, especially on a new company. And before you know it, you have a convicted child molester in your house watching your kid. It's a huge risk, and this is just not how you select a babysitter. However, if the guy was painting a house, maybe it would work. Or if the guy was going to cut your grass, maybe it would work. The Uber for grass cutters. Now that might be a good idea. There's 6 kids in your neighborhood who cuts grass, and all of them are on this application. Well, you can pick one of them easily. That's crowd economy. I guess, in a way, eBay could be considered a crowd economy. It's just for products as well. Amazon, increasingly so. When they first started off, they were just an online store. Well diversified inventory stream. But now they've become a crowd economy where people can go on and push their own products, and they have a user ID, and they can open their own little store on Amazon. And with eBay especially, probably in a sense I would say the whole independent store feeling and idea is even more real with eBay. Okay, so we want to talk about the different aspects of crowd economy that you can take advantage of with your own business. The first one is crowd currencies. You're talking about your cryptocurrencies. I suppose you could even try to make your own. I think that takes a lot of technical know-how, but that's the real weakness of cryptocurrencies in the first place, is anybody can make one. Why would I use somebody else's when I can make my own? After a while, it becomes worthless because they haven't really figured out a real purpose for it yet. Peer-to-peer lending and commerce. I've thought about this a lot of times. If there could be a loan service where you could loan money to your friends and they could get the interest payments, and there was an intermediary agency that sort of manage the transaction. There was one called Peer Loans or Peer Lend. I'm not sure if they continue to function as they once did, but that was a popular idea for a while. Equity-based crowdfunding, your Kickstarter campaign, that's a crowd business. That's a forum that a crowd uses to find you. Non-equity-based crowdfunding, I personally think equity-based crowdfunding is a lot better, but it comes with a lot of regulations. If you can say, I will give you the first product off the assembly line if you contribute to my crowdfunding, or I'll give you one of the first 100 or one of the first 1,000, that's attractive to some people, especially if it's a collectible type of item, or people love to be first. They want to be the first ones with it. If you have a good idea, it could work through crowdfunding and through crowd economy. The sharing economy, co-creation, working together. I think even Google Documents could be considered part of crowd economy, couldn't it? Social business, the video game industry where you can play video games with your friends. That is a form of crowd economy too. Crowd tasks and creativity. You see 4 musicians in 4 windows playing together on YouTube over webcam or over web conference. And then it's broadcast over YouTube. There's crowd economy taking place all over the place there. And you can only assume that these sort of phenomena are going to grow into the future. The public is really hungry for new platforms that they can use to make their lives easier, to accomplish their dreams faster. Personally, I had an idea for a crowd economy one time, or a crowd economy business. And that was because, I'm a musician. I like to play guitar. I have always wanted to find musicians to play with, but I've always found it very difficult. Drummers are always in short supply. Every drummer I know is in 3 bands. And, bass players are not the most well-advertised type of musician either. It's always easy to find more guitar players, but to find the support or to find a good piano player to play with also, who also has time, who's also looking, it's very difficult. Up until now, we've had Craigslist, and you can post an advertisement and find people who are looking, but then you have to, there's so many question marks there. It's so uncurated of a method of finding just in this specific niche. Craigslist, it's not enough. And when I came to Ukraine, I asked a lot of people, how do I find musicians to play with? Is there a website? Is there a forum? No, we kind of use Facebook pages, and people just kind of find out who they find out about, and it's more person to person. And then in the United States, it's not so much different. There could be a forum where musicians sign up, they say what they play, and they, maybe there's some schedule. You can ask for time slots in people's schedule. You can post what dates you're available, or what your purpose is, or what you're trying to develop, or what type of group you're trying to join. And you can find each other based on the way you categorize yourself into the network. And this would allow you to find people to jam with. And I know it would be successful because I have wished for it a lot of times. I wish I could find a drummer right now. I don't know how to find one. Well, if there was a network that I could just go on and find all musicians who are available. Or let's assume that I want to do extreme sports. You could set up a social media just around finding people to do extreme sports with you. I want to go camping. I want to go skateboarding. I want to go bungee jumping. I want to go jump out of an airplane. Who's coming with me? That would be a popular, probably, social network if it was just about that niche. The temptation becomes, though, to make it bigger, to make it try to compete with Facebook. But it's not necessary to do that because Facebook already exists. But what Facebook doesn't do is activities management at all, or putting skilled people together in any sort of way. They want to get into dating because that's the most obvious direction to go with it, I suppose. They should have done it a long time ago. Let's look at a few others, see if there's anything else interesting here. Crowd intelligence, building ideas together, civic engagement, digitally collect platforms and activities to help inform, organize, and empower. It's happening a lot with coronavirus right now. I often wonder about the credentials or the actual understanding of the people claiming to inform, or the intentions of them informing. Why are they doing this? But for now, we stay in our house. because they tell us to, and next month we make new decisions perhaps. So that is just a little bit on crowdfunding. It's a great way to get your idea off the ground. If you start off by saying, what sort of service do I wish to provide? And then from there, you look at your crowdfunding options. If you want, activities coordinator, people coordination, crowd economy is a great way to get involved.